You're listening to Keith Engle, the host of TGI Sports Talk on the National Streaming Sports Roku channel.
Football season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities and shop live events with confidence.
Good evening, everybody. Keith Engle here for TGI Sports Talk's College Football Huddle. How's everybody doing? We're a couple minutes late. I apologize. We're doing double duty tonight as we filled in on the professional sports show on National Streaming Sports tonight to help out Mac McGrath, who's recovering from a couple of health issues, and we hope Mac is back. Linda was on, his wife, saying that he's doing better, and hopefully Mac is on the road to return. And my thanks to James Martin and Sonia for helping me out earlier as well. Bo Crouch couldn't make it because he's in the middle of a bomb cyclone in Washington. We hope he's safe and sound up there. Guys, I want to welcome everybody watching tonight on our Facebook page, the TGI Sports Talk Facebook page, our personal page, obviously, the TGI Sports Talk YouTube and Twitter pages. And we're live on hope we're live on all these things. Let me actually check Facebook and see if we're live on anything right now. Looks like we're live on my page. Let's see if we're live on the other. We've had some troubles. Facebook and the Nazis over there are having some issues letting me stream my shows. Looks like we're good everywhere. Look at that. I guess I better keep my comments to myself. Anyway, we're streaming there. We're live on Roku on the National Streaming Sports channel. Make sure you get that channel downloaded, guys. Free. Plenty of great content. Quick shout out to Ralph Williams at RW Media. Ralph does some great stuff out of Pittsburgh, covering the Panthers, who we'll talk about maybe a little bit as we talk about the ACC and the college football huddle college football playoff in general, which is a jumbled mess, as we hoped it would be. Chaos is going to reign here, and has been raining, and we'll go through what the playoff looks like today and what some scenarios are. There are 20 teams alive, really, in the college football playoff race. Some hanging in there, but there's about 13 that control their own destiny, and some of the teams that are in do not. Crazy things would have to happen, but that is not controlling your own destiny. Anyway, Ralph is at RW Media. He does the Sports Corner from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern every Tuesday with Smoke and Jim Frazier. I've guested on that show and have a blast with those guys. Also, some of the groups, John Gonzalez at Sports Authorities, Flo and the Gang at Bottom Line Sports. Great podcast that they do. That's on the Let's Talk Sports Network. Tanner and the guys do a great job over there. They're good friends of the show as well. Ken Krause at Sports Buds, Sports of All Sorts. And then we got to come up with some new guys that really promote this college show specifically. But thank you for everybody for watching. DDH, thumbs up to you. And if I forgot anybody, I apologize. Lots to talk about. Again, big upsets last week, guys. I mean, what do we have? Where's my thing from last Sunday? 7 top 25 teams go down, I believe. 2 in the top 6 go down. We got big changes in the playoff rankings, which we'll talk about in a second. And we'll look at this week's big games. We got a huge game coming up with Indiana and Ohio State. We got an Army-Navy game, which is of great importance. And some other teams, everybody's got big games that they have to win, and some losable games are out there. So it's going to be interesting. CA, good evening. CA was with us on the professional sports show. Michael Gott is with us. How you doing, Michael? Michael made a comment, and again, everybody's opinion is certainly worth hearing, Michael. And Cam Newton was a great college quarterback, but he was not Tim Tebow for sure. Not as good as him. Not even as good as Joe Montana in my mind. Not as good as Archie Manning, who didn't win any national championships, but changed the way the game was played a lot in the SEC. And if I think about it, I'll come up with a bunch more. God. Cam was a great college quarterback, though. Again, he'll be in my top 10, and I got to give it some thought, but, I'm not going to put him at number one. Tim Tebow's number one. Tim Tebow's one of the top 5 college players of all time. And again, I go against the norm a little bit because I'm a huge Archie Griffin fan. 2 consecutive Heisman trophies. Only person ever to do it with some great Ohio State teams. Number 1 college football player of all time in my mind. We've had this discussion a few times. And it's all subjective. Eras change, numbers change. A game's played differently. John Gonzalez from the Sports Authorities, we mentioned one of the best admins, if not the best admin out there. John often pops in and contributes, and we're happy to have him here. Jim Plunkett at Stanford was a great college quarterback. I agreed. Did he won the Heisman, correct? I think his senior year, if I'm not mistaken, at Stanford. No national championship. Cam's got the national championship. And there again, Punk was another great one. People forget about, and again, I never care because we get into comments. We always get into these conversations and we go, well, he didn't do anything in the pros. I don't care. When I get into the conversations, and I think that's the context that Michael brought it up on the show previously, was that, Cam, he wasn't saying, he was saying, people say Tim Tebow can't be the greatest college quarterback of all time because he sucked in the pros. Well, so what? We're talking about college specifically. It's a totally different game. Hello, James. While I agree there are 4 or 5 quarterbacks that may be better all time than Cam Newton, I think Cam ranks in the top 3. You moved up. Impact in their championship year. I think that Cam ranks top 3 based on the impact of their championship year. There weren't any great players offensively with him. Him and Nick Farley, both offensive and defensively, were the best impactful players at Auburn. It's a good take. It's a great take, actually. The way the game's played, Roger Staubach, better college quarterback than Cam Newton. Just was at Navy. Now, the game was played differently, right? So some of the guys I mentioned, like Archie Manning, not going to have the numbers that Cam had and didn't win any national championships at Ole Miss. But I think Archie Manning is in the top 5 college quarterbacks of all time. I think I already mentioned Tebow's the number 1 in my mind. What else did I want to talk about? There's Staubach is there. Montana's there for me. There's a guy who played for Notre Dame. He was an announcer for CBS and played with Green Bay. Why I can't think of his name. It'll come to me. Great players. Joe Theismann, who was Thies, his name was Thiesman until the Heisman marketing machine got to him and hadn't changed the pronunciation of his name. Pat Sullivan at Auburn was a great college quarterback, Heisman Trophy winner. Steve Spurrier won a Heisman Trophy at Florida. But again, I'm not going to put, I don't think Sullivan, I'm not going to put Sullivan and Spurrier ahead of Cam, I don't think. Hell, Bryce Young was probably a better college quarterback than Cam Newton, quite frankly. And again, I know what James' point is. I get James' point. Bryce Young played with a lot better talent than what happened? How come I lost my there we go. Bryce played with a lot better talent. Heck, Mac Jones might have been a better college quarterback. Again, just you got to go by the eye test, right? Cam was a phenomenal athlete. That's James' point. And he didn't play with a lot of great players, and he didn't have a great coach, quite frankly. I think Gene Chizik was the coach of that team, correct? So Cam's going to be in my top 10. maybe he makes my top 5. If I rethink it, I'm certainly not going to put him ahead of Tebow ever. I'm probably not putting him ahead of Montana. I don't think I'm putting ahead of Manning. We've mentioned a lot of good guys tonight, though. So anyway, it's good fodder. Anyway, back to last week's games. Gosh, man, Georgia goes down. I'm sorry, Georgia wins, I should say. And thrashes their. Well, I'm sorry, I'm getting myself all mixed up here. Blah 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 blah. Georgia comes back with a win. Thank you. LSU goes down. Their chances are done. Who else lost in the top 20? Tennessee, who lost to Georgia, obviously. BYU loses to Kansas, who, again, is probably the best 4-6 team in the country. This is a team that has led in football games for a longer period of times this year than Penn State, than Georgia, than about 5 teams in the top 10, but they keep losing games in the fourth quarter and losing a bunch of one-score games. And they may come out on top of Colorado this week, who they've got at home. They're playing major spoilers in the Big 12. Joe Namath at Alabama, another good one. John. There's a ton of them. I mean, we could go on forever. And it's hard because of the eras. I can't believe I cannot think of the guy from Notre Dame that I'm thinking of. Paul Horning. Paul Horning, great quarterback at Notre Dame. Anyway, we got a lot to talk about, man, because things are getting really, really interesting in the college rankings. We're going to go right to the pool because there's so much to talk about, or the poll. I was pretty close. I predicted every spot correctly except 11 and 12, and I got the teams right. They're just swapped. So this was Sunday morning, and you can go back and watch the videotape. And I think you guys can trust me because I sit here and admit when I'm wrong, which is often. But I had Oregon 1, Ohio State 2, Texas 3, Penn State 4. Those were easy. Indiana 5. Indiana is one of the most vulnerable teams here. If they get blown out by Ohio State this weekend, they're going to have trouble staying in the top 12 because they will not have beaten. This is the only top 25 team they played all year. And that's almost impossible playing in the Big Ten, but they've managed to have a very soft schedule. They played very well. Signetti's done a great job there, deserves his contract extension because nobody wins at Indiana. But they're probably the most vulnerable. Notre Dame can't have a stinker. They'll probably beat Army, but they can't have a stinker against USC. They still need to play good football. If they don't lose, they're in. I think if they lose one, they're still probably in, depending on how close it is. They might be better off losing Army than to USC, quite frankly. Alabama, they beat up on Mercer last week. We're on the Little Sisters of the Poor tour for the SEC teams. Mercer for Alabama last week. UMass will get paid like $3 million. They will get their asses kicked to Georgia this week. UTEP, the same thing, going to Tennessee. And I think I had one other one that I'm not seeing here. I'm not sure who Ole Miss is playing. I think Ole Miss is playing. No, Ole Miss might have a decent game now that I think about it. They had their cupcakes early. Miami at 8, I had. Miami's still vulnerable. Don't control their own destiny. Well, they do control their own destiny. But SMU controls its own destiny side by side with them. So there's a lot of that going on here. And I'll talk about this in a second. Even outside of the top 12 teams right now, there are teams that control their own destiny, which is why Ole Miss at 9 and Georgia at 10 are vulnerable, because there are teams outside of the top 12 that could push them down. Boise State's at 12. Boise State, as of today, would have a bye in the first round because they're the highest ranked. They're in the top 4 highest ranked conference winners. The Big 12 right now, and that'll sort itself out. Boise State, if they win out, let's just say Colorado or BYU wins out in the Big 12, I think they end up ranked higher than Boise State. Anyway, we had Ole Miss at 9, Georgia at 10, Tennessee at 11, Boise State at 12. Just on the outside, SMU, but they control their own fate. BYU, but they control their own fate. Texas A&M, but they control their own fate, and they're part of one of the crazy SEC scenarios and tiebreaker type situations that could push Ole Miss or Georgia out of the playoff conversation. Colorado at 16 controls its own fate. Clemson does not. South Carolina still again, things could go crazy at the top with chaos, are still alive. Army doesn't control its own fate. Arizona State, interestingly enough, at 21, I want to say they control their own fate. Let me see. I want to make sure I'm right about this. Arizona State is 5-2. So they're one game behind Colorado. They're one game behind BYU, but they've got BYU this week. I like Arizona State against BYU. I really do. They control their own fate. They're ranked 21st in this poll. I'm having trouble saying poll in this show lately. They control their own fate from the 21 spot. Tell me again how the regular season doesn't matter. I'll also tell you, going back to this poll, and I'll get to your comments here in a second, if there are any. What's interesting to me, we've talked a little bit. Every week matters of the regular season. You know what's interesting? There are teams that are probably not going to want to get into their conference championship game. There is no upside for, say, Ole Miss or Georgia. Well, there is an upside. You get in there, you win automatically, you're in, and you're going to get a bye. But if they were to get to the conference championship and lose a third game, there's a very good chance they'd be out of the pool. They'd be out of the playoff. A pool, I guess that works. They'd be out of the playoff field. Who else might fit that scenario? Indiana might be better off to play a close game against Ohio State and lose this week and not get in the Big Ten championship game and get blown out and not go. So again, there's some weird scenarios that are unintended. It'll be curious to see down the road how this affects the conference championship games. I think they should do away with them. And the regular season winners are the teams that will get the buys, get the automatic bids, and then turn the buys. But you still got wide open stuff going on in every single conference. There's not a conference that is wrapped up, not one. I had something here I wanted to go by. Those are teams that control their own destiny. I'm not really interested in that right now. Where is that? Well, we can just look at we'll just look at the standings here real quick. Let's look at them all. We'll start with the AAC. We have the Army against Tulane. That is pretty much a done deal now. That'll happen a week before Army-Navy. So they'll play the conference championship game, and then Army-Navy will pay their game. It's not a conference game this year, even though they play in the same conference. Will come after the final selections for the playoffs. So if Army gets in, or Tulane, either Tulane or Army's going to win. If Army wins this conference, and Boise State should falter. By the way, there's another team that controls their own destiny, and that's UNLV. Actually, no, they need some help. They need some help from Fresno State this week. But Army, it's interesting. They could be in the playoff, could lose to Navy, and have 2 losses and still be in the playoff. So it'll be very interesting. But we have at least the conference champion is settled there. We don't know yet. Either Tulane or Army could still be the Group of 5 representative. they're going to have to win the conference championship and get ranked above Boise State. In the ACC, you got SMU undefeated. You got Clemson and Miami with one loss. Clemson's done playing conference games. Miami's got 2 left. And as I talked about with my adversary at the Creekside a couple of weeks ago, Miami's not guaranteed to win. They play at home against Wake Forest this week. They should win, but they should have won 2 weeks ago against Georgia Tech as well. They go to Syracuse on the 30th, which will be at that game. Myself and my stepson and his girlfriend and my wife will all be at that game. And Syracuse has a puncher's chance to win that game. And then they would win a tiebreaker against Clemson. Should they win out, they'll be in the championship game. I'm not so sure SMU's not a better team than them right now. With a Miami loss, Clemson would be in the conference championship game, which is what the argument was really about. BYU and Colorado right now stand to be in the Big 12 championship game, but Arizona sits there, again, controlling your own destiny. Beat BYU this week, and they're in the conference championship game against probably Colorado. I think Colorado loses this week, which brings Iowa State back into the mix. Crazy stuff, man. We're going to get to your comments in just a second. Let me go through a few more scenarios. Oregon is wrapped up an appearance in the Big 12 Big 10 championship game. Indiana and Ohio State are playing for that other side of it, probably. Not probably, definitely. As one of them will be 8-0. See, these conferences don't want to play that ninth game either, by the way. Probably four teams gonna make this from this Big 10, unless Indiana really puts up a stinker this weekend. Conference USA isn't gonna matter, but it looks like it'll be Jacksonville and Sam Houston will play this weekend, which is gonna probably determine one side of that championship game there. Notre Dame, we talked about, no championship game for them to play in. They're probably in. Win their 2 games and they're in. In the MAC, you're going to have Miami probably playing either Ohio or Bowling Green. The Mountain West, Boise State, and somehow Colorado State was not a really good football team, but has not played any kind of tough schedule. They haven't played any of the good teams in the Mountain West. They get Fresno State, who's favored at home this week. If they were to lose, you'd have a rematch most likely of UNLV against Boise State, with UNLV still with a chance to slide into that group of 5 spot, possibly. They need some help above them, because if UNLV were to beat them, an Army or Tulane would then be in control, I think, of that group of 5 spot, depending on how close that game is and whatnot. And the SEC, Texas and Texas A&M are there, but they've got to play each other on Thanksgiving night for the first time in, 12 years, I think, maybe. One of the great rivalries that got lost in realignment. If the Aggies win this game, now you get into a bunch of tiebreakers with Texas and Georgia and Tennessee and Alabama and Ole Miss, all with 2 losses. Same thing, I guess, you can look at it if Texas were to win. It'd be the same thing with Texas A&M and tiebreakers. So some crazy stuff could happen where Ole Miss and Georgia still would not be in. But you've got a bunch of teams, Texas A&M, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina even, way back and need a lot of help, all with a chance still to get the playoff in the SEC. And then in the Sun Belt, you're probably going to end up with Louisiana against probably Marshall in that championship game. Let's see what's going on here. Hello, Rick. How are you, buddy? Good to have you. It's funny, Rick. We were talking about Georgia controlling their own destiny if they beat Tennessee, which would have meant they controlled their own destiny before they played Tennessee. But they don't. They pretty much do, but there are tiebreakers that could push them out of the playoffs still. And Georgia's a team that I don't know, Rick. As a Georgia fan, I don't know if I'd want them in the SEC championship game at this point. Because the way the SEC is set up, you could very well lose that game and be out of the playoff. Where sitting on the outside of it, there's a very good chance you just win out, don't get in the championship game, and you're in. Maybe the same thing for Ole Miss. Yeah, maybe conference championship games should be for second place teams in the respective conferences. That's a possibility. I mean, you really got a scenario where these conference championship games, it would behoove some teams not to get there. I mean, again, if I'm Georgia or Ole Miss, I'm not sure I want to play. Why risk that third loss? Because I'm not sure a 3-loss Ole Miss team gets in, and I'm not sure a 3-loss Georgia team gets in, quite frankly. There's JB from the Back It Up Binge podcast. How are you? Good to have you with us. I mean, there's some crazy stuff going on, man. And again, you have a bunch of teams that do control their own destiny. We talked about this. Let's see, did I miss anybody controlling their own destiny? All these teams at the top we know do. Somewhere I had something I wanted to refer to. Oregon's already in. Ohio State, most likely Ohio State's in. I mean, but there are some scenarios where teams like Pittsburgh, they got to go to Minnesota yet. They go to Minnesota and lose. Are they guaranteed to be in the playoff picture? I'm not so sure. Who else was there? Was somebody else who had a tough. I mean, Ole Miss has got Florida this week. Florida's played up and down. SMU's got Virginia on the road. Texas gets Kentucky, who stepped up big a couple of times. BYU gets Arizona. Arizona, again, from the 21 spot, controls their own destiny. I like Kansas potentially to really put a crink in that Colorado run that they've been on since week 2. And Bama gets Oklahoma, bad Oklahoma team, but who knows? The Vols do not control their own destiny, but right now I might have somehow, in my excitement, right now they're at number 11. They would be in. But again, they're in that danger zone, right? They could also, I guess there's probably tiebreaker scenario where they can make it. They're in that group of SEC teams with 2 losses in the conference. And you could theoretically, again, not knowing, let me see if I go back to the SEC. So Georgia's done with playing. Tennessee's got 1 more game. If they win, they finish with 2 losses. Texas and Texas A&M both have 2 games left. Alabama's got 2 games left. Ole Miss has got 2 games left. So could all these teams end up? I think all these teams could end up with 2 losses, or just 2 losses. Florida and Mississippi for Ole Miss. Let's just say they win those. Oh, crap. Am I going to have to go back and forth each time? Probably. That's all right. Alabama, I don't think they've got a game to lose. Oklahoma and Auburn. Well, Auburn's Oklahoma's good. This is their season right here, right? And by the way, we've been rough on Brett Venable here, as a lot of places have. It's time to cool the jets there. His wife has had a recurrence of cancer, and our thoughts and prayers are with his family. They've got young kids, and this is a time to send good thoughts Brett Venable's way. And this is a big game. This team's going to be emotional this week. Alabama better be ready to play football. And then Auburn's obviously a rivalry game, so we'll see how that works out. Tennessee has 1 game left this week. Who are they playing? I probably wrote them down here, didn't I? Didn't I write it down? They got 1 conference game left anyway. They have 2 games left. Oh, yeah, they have UTEP this week, and they got a dangerous Vandy team. Vandy's already beat Alabama, pushed Texas to the limit. But again, I would say Tennessee should win that game. So, again, Georgia's done. You got Texas and Texas A&M with 2 per conference games left. You could have, well, theoretically, you could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams tied with 2 losses. I don't know what the tiebreakers are in those situations. I don't head to head. You can't really go head to head probably because you got 6 teams involved. So strength of schedule is going to come in. There's all kinds of crazy tiebreakers that could come into play here, depending on who and how many teams we're talking about. Usually these things will sort themselves out. I don't know that this will. I think you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 teams tied with 2 losses. And if that's the case, I'm guessing the teams that are in the playoffs don't want to get in the championship game, as I said before. So thank you for bringing up Tennessee, Michael. It's crazy. And this is what, again, it's exciting, isn't it? This is why I said people who say, 12-team playoff, nobody's going to care. The regular season means nothing. Means nothing? 21 teams alive in the playoff for a playoff spot. The team at 21 still has a chance to win out and get a bye. You've got teams like, what I'm going to say, Penn State, Indiana, Notre Dame, Alabama, Miami. Oh, I lost track already. Penn State, Indiana, Notre Dame. Keep your fingers going, Keith. Alabama, Miami, Ole Miss, Georgia, Tennessee, Boise State. 8 of the 12 teams that are in today could be looking on the outside here in 3 weeks. Probably not, it's not very unlikely, but it's possible. And maybe even Texas. Not beyond the realm of possibility. It's absolutely crazy. There's our boy AC. How are you? AC and I are excited. Notre Dame all the way up to 6. It can only get as high as 5, remember. Notre Dame's ceiling as far as seeding is 5 because they don't play in a conference. And the top 5 spots go to, or the top 4 spots go to the 4 highest seeded conference champions. And the 5th one could be a conference championship, a champion as well, or it could be Notre Dame or another at-large team. Could college football be any more exciting than this? And look at the games. All these games still mean stuff. It's not a great schedule. You got Indiana, Ohio State, biggest game of the weekend. Game day will be there twice this year at Indiana. Army and Notre Dame at Yankee Stadium. Army with, again, a chance. Notre Dame should, I think it's going to be similar to the Navy game. But Army's got a puncher's chance. And Notre Dame's getting hurt by NIU not playing that well since they beat them. Texas A&M loss a few weeks ago hurt them a bit. USC not being any good hurts them. But Army and Navy being better certainly makes their case better. So there's pluses and minuses. Who else did I say? UNLV, San Jose State, big game in the Mountain West. Fresno State and Colorado State ends up being a big game. Ole Miss in Florida. Florida's shown that they can play when they have their minds to it. Virginia has already upset Pittsburgh to knock them out of the ACC running. Well, SMU, who's struggled a little bit last week, have that same issue. Kentucky, not a good football team, but they've played a couple of good games this year against Ole Miss on the road, Georgia at home. Penn State goes to Minnesota, as I said. Colorado to Kansas. Bama to Oklahoma. A&M gets Auburn. Again, dangerous spot. Iowa State to Utah. Would all these games be in play and huge if we didn't have this playoff starting? No, they wouldn't be. Then you got, as I said, the Little Sisters of the Poor playing the rest of the SEC this weekend. I get it. They play a tough schedule. I'm not really getting on Georgia for playing UMass this week. I'm more getting on UMass for taking $3 million to go get their asses kicked. But Georgia's played maybe the toughest schedule in the country. We talked before the season that it would be Florida played the toughest schedule in the country. But now maybe it's Georgia. I mean, they played against 5 top 25 teams, 5 top 10 teams, haven't they? They played Bama. They played Ole Miss. They played Tennessee. That's 3 top 10 teams. 5 top 25 teams. They've got the best strength of schedule argument of anybody, probably. Do they play at neutral sites for the playoffs? The first round would be the home games. So Notre Dame would be looking at a home game, AC, if they get into the playoff. And right now, I believe, if I look at the where is the come on, there we go. I think that's it right here. If we look at the bracket, Oregon, Boise State, Texas, and Miami all get byes. Now, those second round games will not be home games. They will be like the Rose Bowl and just 4 of the major bowl games that will be played as part of 6 bowl games will be played part of the quarterfinals and the semifinals. Right now, actually, because of the way the rankings, again, even though Notre Dame's 6, because of the way, again, Ohio State can't be 2, right? They're going to have to be 5. And Penn State can't be 4. They're going to have to be 6. So Notre Dame gets knocked all the way down to 8 because of it. So the seedings are a little different than the rankings, which I think they really ought to. I think the playoff committee ought to probably put them in the seeding order because it gets a little confusing. So Notre Dame, as it stands today, would go to Alabama. But that could easily change, EC. Ohio State would go to BYU. Indiana would go to Ole Miss. And Penn State would go to Georgia. Some great first-round matchups, too. And Boise State, by the way, has got a bye as we sit here today. Now, I think if Colorado runs a table in the Big 12, I think they definitely pass Boise State. And maybe even BYU. So it's going to matter whether that Big 12 team, and I guess I don't think the ACC is going to have a worry about finishing behind Boise State, because I would think SMU, let's just assume SMU and Miami win out, they're going to be ranked ahead of Boise State. Now, if they both have a loss, I mean, it's possible the ACC and the Big 12 finish behind Boise State. Maybe they get the 3rd spot. It's possible. So no neutral sites in the first round, but right now Notre Dame would be on the road. And AC and I both have a lot of money running on future bets on Notre Dame to win the national championship. Well, just short of $7,000, yours truly stands to win if somehow Notre Dame can get on a roll or stay on a roll and win a national championship. Exciting stuff, man. I am so pumped. Plus, there's so many other great stories. The Heisman race is a 3-horse race in my mind. Jalen Milroe took himself out early. Carson Beck took himself out early. Travis Hunter had a Heisman type. I think he won the Heisman Trophy last week myself. He got his first rushing touchdown of the year. and a really dynamic run. Had an interception in that game. Another standout. Played 130 plays. Nobody plays 130 plays today. Nobody. Best player in the country. When he wins a Heisman, he's got Judy behind him, who's on a pace to break Barry Sanders' all-time record. I think in more games, but still. For rushing in a season, the record for rushing in a season, he's on a pace to break that. Have an outstanding year for Boise State. Cam Ward's had a great year. I think that Georgia Tech game really knocked him back. I think he was leading at that point in my mind, and probably got dropped to the third spot. And then you still got the quarterback from Indiana's might get invited to New York. I think it's those three guys, and the rest. Those are the three guys. I think they invite 3 finalists, maybe 4, to New York. So, AC says, look at the spread and the over-under in Tennessee UTEP game. I think I found as close. It can't be didn't we talk about? Was you and I talked about what's wrong with the BYU spread last week? I stupidly bet BYU. I don't know if you would have brought it up last week, AC, but there was something wrong with that spread. Yeah, like I bet the wrong side of it. Let me go to the scores. Let's see. So what are you asking me here? Look at the spread and the over-under in Tennessee UTEP. I think I found as close to a can't-miss bet as possible. Bet Tennessee in the over, then also UTEP and the under. So if I bet Tennessee minus 41.5, wow. I get what you're saying here. Well, yeah, but I can't win both bets. I can't win both bets. Bet Tennessee in the over. So that means I got to cover 41.5. I got to win by 42. The other team's only got to score 10. 11. So I'd win that. I'd win those 2 bets. I mean, the best you could do is win 3 out of 4 in this situation. How do I win 3 out of 4? I can't win any. I'm confused, AC. You're going to have to help me out here. Well, you're still bet them to win. That's all I'm saying. And by the way, I got all of that for $100 because I bet 100 on the DraftKings my DraftKings account that I already have. And it was like plus 2,800. And then I got another 200 for free for signing up for another betting site. So I got $200 that I put on there over under, and it was like 30. I'm sorry, 100 was 24 I'm getting. So that's actually $7,200, right? 24. Pretty sure that's what I got. $7,200. That's correct. For 300, and I only bet 100. It only cost me 100. Shedeur Sanders is a very dark horse in my mind. I don't even see him in the betting odds. Let's see, somewhere here. I saw the betting odds here somewhere. James, hang on one second. Let me see if I can get back to where did I see that? By the way, how about Ray Lewis wanting to be the coach at FAU? They fired Tom Herman this week. Very interesting. Ray Lewis wants that job. Yeah, I thought I had the Travis Hunter leaving. Here we go. Heisman straw poll. I think this is the one. If this isn't it. Travis Hunter, in a straw poll, Travis Hunter runs away from Ashton Gianti. He gets 80 points in this poll, 26 first place votes, 1 for Gianti. That's how not close it is. Cam Ward, Dylan Gabriel is a guy that I was thinking of was listed as fourth in most of the places that I saw, James. And he's really not. He hasn't been great. Oregon's played very good football, but he hasn't thrown for much more than 200 yards in the last 4 games. He's played good quarterback, but again, he's not going to stand out. So Cam Ward doesn't get any first place votes, gets 2 seconds and a third. Giante gets 22 second place votes. They're the only ones in double digits in this straw poll. Tyler Warren from Penn State, the tight end, gets a mention here. Curtis Rourke, as I mentioned, the Indiana quarterback. Jackson Dart gets 1 vote. Caleb Johnson gets 1 vote. In this straw poll, James Shador is not even mentioned. So, I look at, they've got 3 games left with, if they get to the conference championship game, they've got 3 games left. Now, Shador could do something great. The problem with Shador is he's a good player for sure, but he's overshadowed by a teammate who's doing something nobody else is doing, which is playing virtually every down of the football game. And he's contributing on both sides of the football. He's just the best athlete for sure, and he's the best player in the country. If the Patriots end up with the 1 pick, I want Travis Hunter. And again, he's not going to play both ways in the NFL as much as he is in college, but he is going to play both ways. You can bet anything you want. He'll play some wide receiver. You only need 1 win to make money. How is that? I'm still not following that. I'm still trying to get my head around that. All right, so let's just say I bet $100, right? I bet 100 on Tennessee. Yeah. Well, you're talking about a parlay. I'm sorry. Because I don't bet parlays as a rule. So I'm thinking about individual bets. I got no way to win. I see what you're saying. Yeah, but how much am I going to win? I'm not knowing what parlays pay these days, right? What do you get? 200. Yeah, I mean, that's a guess. I get it. Yeah, I guess I take all the money you got, bet $1 million each way, and make some real money. I can't imagine there's a way you bet the same amount on both. So they're both, you're talking about 2 team parlays both ways. It's close because the over-under, you very rarely see over-unders as close as that. Georgia's close at 13.5. The over-under is higher than the spread. It's only 11. That's interesting. Now, there is a chance you could lose both. I don't think you're guaranteed to win both. Or one. There's no guarantee you win either one, right? I mean, if Tennessee wins this game 41-0, then you lose both parlays. No, that's not right. If Tennessee wins this game 43-0, I lose both parlays. Yeah, there's a way to lose both parlays. You can't win both. Yeah, I got you now. But yeah, again, 43-0 Tennessee. Now, I'm not saying UTEP won't score any points, but you can lose. It's not a guarantee. If there was, then the line wouldn't be that, right? It's very hard. You're looking for that little loophole. It's not there. You can lose. If Tennessee covers a 41.5, it's probably going over. Probably. I think you did say as close to a sure thing as it can be. There is no sure thing here, though. Because again, a 41, anywhere from 42 to 52 to nothing is a winner for Tennessee. Could happen. Yeah. So I get it. I get where you're going. Only a few total scores can cause both bets to lose. Yeah, I just gave you. There's a whole 10-point spread. So, and again, if they score 10 points, I mean, if UTEP gets 10 points, you got a really good shot of winning one. You win about 50 cents for every dollar you bet, I think. Well, I hope it's $1.50. I know what you're saying. If it's not $1.50, I'm not betting. Oh gosh, right? I'm going to give you the picks. Let me look at the college football standings here so far. Bad week for Keith. Keith had moved up. I'm talking about himself in the third person. That can't be a good thing, right? Like Ricky Henderson. Keith be falling down the standings here. I can tell you a funny Ricky Henderson story if you want to hear it. Ricky talking about himself in the third person. So I got a very funny tenure story with Ricky if you want to hear it. Just somebody say yes, I want to hear the Ricky Henderson story, and I'll tell it. If nobody wants to hear it, then nobody speak up. Leading the way, let's see, last week's first. We had the top guys at 6 out of 10. That was Beamer Ball, which is our boy Neil Bush. Our generic ESPN guy had 6. The Sports Nut had 6, and that's it. Rick had 5. Kenny had 4. Keith had 3. And Paul had 3. Not good. Leading the way in overall standings, the ESPN generic guy has still got 74. The Sports Nut 72. Nick is down to 69. And Keith fell to 67, fell 7 behind. I was closing that gap. And right behind me is Rick at 63. Paul at 63 as well. Poppy's at 55. That's Kenny. And the rest have pretty much fallen by the wayside. My picks this week, the ESPN picks, and we'll go through all the top 25 here, or at least the games that are relevant here in a second. Ohio State, I'm going to take Ohio State over Indiana. Indiana's been a great story, but they really haven't played anybody. You can only play who's on your schedule. I understand that. I'm really not knocking them that much for not playing anybody, and they may very well surprise the hell out of me this weekend. I know Ohio State center went out today for the season. The Buckeyes really one loss against Oregon, and it wasn't by that much. This offense is not necessarily explosive, but it's been efficient. I like the Buckeyes at home. I don't think it's going to be the blowout that will knock Indiana out of the playoff, though. Jacksonville, I like Jacksonville State over Sam Houston. We'll go with the percentages there. Same with Liberty over Western Kentucky. Excuse me. I'm going to take Arizona at home, which is going against the trend, to beat BYU. BYU is, again, a little bit like Miami, have been kind of looking for a loss here the last 3-4 games. They finally found it against one of the better 4 and 6 teams in the country in Kansas. And I like Arizona, who's been playing really, really good football. Currently 8-2. And again, controlling their own destiny in this Big 12 race. I like them. Colorado also controlling its own destiny from outside the top 12. Is going to travel to Kansas, who has upset Iowa State and BYU in back-to-back weeks. As I mentioned, they have controlled the football. Been ahead in the games more than Penn State, more than Georgia, more than a bunch of teams this year that are ranked in the top 25, but they keep losing close ball games. They finally have won a couple of really good teams the last couple of weeks. And I'm going to take Kansas to win this game at home against Coach Prime in Colorado. And again, that does mean I'm still very wrong about Colorado and where they would be this year. Excuse me. Texas A&M, I'm going to take over Auburn on the road, keep their playoff hopes alive, and everything will ride on that Texas A&M game Thanksgiving night. I'm going to take Iowa State to go into Utah. Utah's had a very tough season without Cam Rising. They've lost some other starters. Kyle Whittingham, great coach, but they've really struggled. I'm going to take Iowa State to bounce back, although they have been known to fade in the late season under Matt Campbell. We'll see how that goes. We'll take the Marshall Thundering Herd over Old Dominion. If Danny Fuller were here, he'd be very happy to hear me take. I'm taking Deshaun Foster and UCLA over Lincoln Riley and the USC Trojans. I had picked them to finish. This is where I'm pretty good, I think, right now. USC was making me look bad early in the year. They got us ranked as high as 11. Got off to like a 4-1 start, but they've lost 4 of their last 5. They're 5-5, and they got a very good chance to finish. I said 5-7, 6-6 best. I think this team finishes 5-7, and they finish with losses to UCLA and Notre Dame. Fresno State, I will take over Colorado State, which will cause some interesting scenarios in that Mountain West and gets UNLV back into the playoff picture. Another team that I'll look at some of these other games in a little bit, but that's the 10 games that are on ESPN slate this week. So let's see what we got here. Where are you? No, there is no such thing as a sure thing for sure. Expect flopping of royal, except it says expect. I think you mean except flopping a royal flush. That's a sure thing. Not in my history. Let's look at some other games of note as well. I like UNLV will play San Jose State. That's on Friday night, right? Do we have any games right now? Should we look at all? Let's look at all of the FBS real quick. We'll go through some of these games quickly because we've got games being played right now. In the MAC, Buffalo is up 8-0 over Eastern Michigan. Ohio is losing to Toledo. Toledo trying to get back. Toledo's been a power in that conference for a while. They're 7-0. They're trying to get back in the conference hunt. We got a couple finals from yesterday, also in the MAC. Akron 38-17 over maybe the worst team. UMass or Kent State's got to be the worst team in the country. One of them. 38-17 Akron over Kent State. Western Michigan loses to Central Michigan 16-14, and Miami of Ohio beats Northern Illinois. Again, another bad loss. Not bad loss, but another loss for Northern Illinois, hurting Notre Dame's overall chances. Tomorrow we get NC State at Georgia Tech. Friday, UNLV against San Jose State. Big game. Coach Ken got up 14-0 against Boise State last week, but they couldn't hold it. They gave them everything they could handle, but Boise State ends up winning that game. UNLV beats them, and Fresno State beats Colorado State. We're going to be looking at a rematch in the Mountain West Championship game of Boise State and Nevada, Las Vegas. Saturday, big games. Again, Wake Forest goes to Miami. Wake should not be in this game, but Miami's had a way of keeping teams in games. Georgia Tech should not have been in that game 2 weeks ago either. At home, Miami should win this game. Our Army goes to Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame, it's a 15-point game, 44.5. I like the over in this game. That's what I did in the Navy game. I'm going to do the same thing here, over the 44, by the way. That's probably going to be a bet for me. Ohio State and Indiana, and I don't bet parlays AC, so it's going to be individual bets for me. Ohio State, Indiana, we already talked about. Florida, Ole Miss, 10.5 on the road could be tough. SMU goes to Virginia. Again, another big number on the road delay, 9.5. Illinois goes to Rutgers. Iowa goes to Maryland. Who cares? UConn gets Syracuse. UConn very quietly 7-3. Syracuse a 10.5-point favorite here. I might take the over in this game. Not sure. I don't think it'll be on our card that we can bet. My normal betting area, but I may make a wager on DraftKings in that game. I don't know. We'll see. BC and North Carolina. Sam Houston, Jacksonville State. UMass, as I said, getting a bunch of money to go get their asses kicked in Athens. UTEP, Tennessee, you and I have talked about that already. AC, Western Kentucky goes to Liberty, a big game in Conference USA. Interesting game. Charleston with one win goes to Florida State with one win. Who thought? God, how bad is this? Florida State might get their second win. Bowling Green goes to Ball State. Rice and UAB. New Mexico State, don't care. James Madison and App State, interesting game. James Madison 8-2, looking to get in a bowl game. Arizona goes to TCU. Florida International goes to Kennesaw State. UL Monroe goes to Arkansas State. South Alabama goes to Southern Miss. Charlotte to Florida Atlantic, who just fired Tom Herman this week. And we said Ray Lewis wants that job. He's not going to get it. I'm not sure why he wants it, but Texas will get Kentucky. I think Texas will win. I don't think they cover. Penn State goes to Minnesota. Watch out. This is a sneaky game. This is a game that Penn State better be careful as they finish up their Big Ten schedule. BYU goes to Arizona State. I like Arizona State in this game a lot. Deciding whether I want to bet the game or the over. Colorado goes to Kansas. Yeah, this is a big over under 59.5. Probably goes over. Citadel against Clemson, Northwestern against Michigan, Wisconsin and Nebraska. One of these teams is going to finish under 500. Very disappointing. 2-5 in the Big Ten for Nebraska in a season I thought, and a lot of people thought, Matt Rule would have this team taking a step forward, and they are not doing it. Stanford and Cal in the game. I don't know what they call this anymore. I guess it's the game. It's a big game for them. We all remember nobody said they wanted to hear the Ricky Henderson story, eh? Oh, well. I'll keep it to myself for another time. It's a funny story. At least in my head. Texas Tech goes to one of the biggest disappointments in a country, and specifically in the Big 12. Oklahoma State 3-7, 0-7 in the conference. Mike Gundy might be in trouble. The Mike Gundy era could be ending. UCF goes to West Virginia. San Diego State goes to Utah State. Georgia Southern to Coastal Carolina. East Carolina to North Texas. Tulsa goes to South Florida. Wofford to South Carolina. I don't know. I'm reading all these games off. Pittsburgh, dead now in the ACC, goes to Louisville. Missouri goes to Mississippi State. Missouri dead in the SEC, dead in the playoff. Troy goes to Louisiana, Boise State gets Wyoming on the road. Should be a big win for Boise State. Needs to be a big win for Boise State if they want to keep their eye on that bye. Washington State goes to Oregon State. Washington State, well, they lost last week. It would have been very interesting if they'd won last week to see where they'd be ranked without a conference. Not really an independent, but not really got a conference because there's only two teams in the Pac-12 until next year. Baylor goes to Houston. Georgia State goes to Texas State. Alabama, Oklahoma. As I said, our thoughts and prayers are with Coach Venable's family, his wife, himself. What they've got going on is bigger than a football game. Maybe this team comes out fired up. I predicted this team would really struggle in the SEC, and they look to be heading for either a 5-7 or a 6-6 finish. Texas A&M goes to Auburn, a disappointing season in Hugh Brees' first year or second year at Auburn. They're going to get a chance to play spoilers as they get Texas A&M and Alabama to close out their season. Iowa State goes to Utah. We already talked about that game. Vanderbilt gets LSU. LSU with a bad loss again last week. Very bad look for Coach Kelly. I don't know if you're still with us, James, or not, but very bad loss for LSU and a bad look for Coach Kelly, cursing out one of his wide receivers, and another wide receiver comes up and gets in his face. He looks disinterested on the things don't look to be going well in LSU. I mean, I suppose they could turn the corner. a good recruiting year, a good transfer portal year, but I'm not sure Brian Kelly's going to be there long in LSU. Disappointing season for them for sure. And maybe he's lost control of that team. Virginia Tech goes to Duke, Cincinnati, K-State, another disappointing team in the Big 12, K-State. USC and UCLA, we talked about. Air Force with a disappointing year under Troy Calhoun, but might get a win against Nevada. And we already talked about Colorado State. Other big news in college football. What else is going on? We had a couple. We talked about coaching changes. Central Michigan's, Jim McElwain, who had a really good coaching career at Colorado State. He did very well. Then he got the Florida job and did well to get started and got fired. Went to Central Michigan, did okay. He'll be retiring after this season. We talked about FAU firing Tom Herman. Dion says, stop talking about the pros. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here at Colorado. We'll see whether that is true or not. There's a lot of rumors that Dion wants to control where Shedeur goes, and also rumors that he might want to go as a package, but he says no. The kickstand is down, is what he said. We'll see whether that's accurate or not. LSU did fall apart, AC. Not a good look for them for sure. Let me look at let's look at this mailbag here a little bit, see if there's, the problem with one of the problems now with having a 12-team playoff, right, is we got to look at, when is head-to-head going to be more important than one loss versus two losses, right? If we end up with Texas with one loss and Georgia with two, if it were to come down to them, I guess it can't come down to that. If in that scenario, Texas would have a bye. I'm trying to think of a better example. I mean, you could get a very simple one with, if Ole Miss and Tennessee and Georgia all get pushed down, and one of them is on the bubble, or three of them are on the bubble, let's say, for the 11 and 12 spots. How are you going to sort that out? Head-to-head. Tennessee and Ole Miss did not play. Georgia lost to Ole Miss. But Ole Miss had a bad loss at home to Kentucky. Georgia's got, 3 top 25 wins where Mississippi's got 1 against Georgia. So it gets very hard when you're comparing all of this information. And you just got to start looking at the eye test, what really matters. We talked about Kansas. They're a perfect candidate to pull off an upset like they did last week, and I think they got a good chance to do it again this week. Believe it or not, this is where I got some of this information. The 4-6 Jayhawks have spent more time leading their opponents this season, 5 hours, 32 minutes, and 45 seconds, in either 9-1 Penn State or 8-2 Georgia. By a lot. Almost a full hour more than Georgia. What are your thoughts on head-to-head ranking? Same thing. Without a discussion about the conference tiebreakers, has there been any consideration to eliminating overtime during the regular season? A tie here or there would help break the logjam. I don't think so. I don't see how ties really change the logjam at all. Who is one coach you might have thought was done to see him turn it around? We were talking about Coach Kelly. Can he turn it around? Brian Kelly might fall into that. In the past, we're talking about Harbaugh doing it at Michigan after he had his salary cut in half, and he also it is a good stat, right? Best 4-6 team in the country. Lost, but good teams learn to win you win late in games. But anyway, Harbaugh fits this as a coach who was dead in the water and kind of came back Had his salary cut in half, had his coaching staffs really ripped out from under him. Brian Kelly had a 4-8 season at Notre Dame, looked to be in trouble, and then ripped off 3 or 4 straight double-digit, maybe 5 double-digit winning seasons. Billy Napier would fit that. I think Billy Napier, Deion fits it now. Deion looked like he was going to be, 2, 3 and done. Didn't look like they were going anywhere better this year than they went last year, and they've done very, very well. Lincoln Riley could be that guy at USC now who hasn't met expectations but still could. Brian Kelly at LSU. Maybe Billy Napier getting this second life that we didn't think he would get next year will be that guy. Not really sure, man. Kelly's a guy that I think is in the most trouble. Him and Lincoln Riley, I think, are in the most trouble of these Power 5 conference coaches, the big schools right now. Luke Fickell's another guy, though, who's failing at his new job at Wisconsin after great success at Cincinnati. They just fired Phil Longo as the offensive coordinator this week. But Wisconsin's never been – I think Wisconsin's always been a bit overrated in the Big Ten. They never seem to get over the top and be that team, right? They've had teams where it looked like they were going to be that. And maybe 1 year, 2 years under Barry Alvarez, they had really good teams and went to a Rose Bowl, but team's never been, really at the top of the college football heap. Do we anticipate any college football players might enter the portal in December? We had guys do it last year. Malik Murphy, who left Texas to go to Duke before the playoff. But with the 12-team playoff this year, I don't think you're going to see a lot of teams. I don't think you'll see a lot of guys entering the portal early this year. Interesting. Current projections have the Big Ten having some seeding advantages over the SEC, and will having to come in that first round, as I said, will teams having to come north. Let's say Notre Dame gets a home game. Where was that? Where's my there we go. Hold on. Right now, Alabama would play Notre Dame, but you could possibly have teams like teams going to Indiana, teams going to Penn State. Actually, you do. I took that back. I had this backwards, AC. I'm reading his rankings wrong. They did this stupid. Usually that's the bottom team that's the home team. I read this whole bracket wrong. Notre Dame is home against Alabama. Ohio State is home against BYU. Indiana would be home against Ole Miss. Penn State would be home against Georgia. Will these teams traveling from the South, getting into the cold weather in December in the North or Midwest, Mideast, make a difference? Possibly. Talent will win out. I don't think the weather really matters unless it's 20 below zero. So I apologize. I got all those matchups backwards where the home team was, so I apologize. Silly me. Nah, I really don't think it'll matter. I think at this point, weather is not going to be a big factor. All right, guys, things have slowed down in the rooms, and I think we're going to wrap it up a little bit early tonight. Again, congratulations to Oregon, who's now in the Big Ten championship game. We're going to see a lot of potentially you could see some movement again with Indiana, Ohio State this week. Army, Notre Dame could have a big impact. Ole Miss, Florida, SMU, all these teams that are in play. Again, it's amazing. 20 teams basically still alive to get into this playoff, and about 13 still control their own destiny. And 8 of the teams that are in the playoff could end up out. So lots of fun to come. and we'll be here to bring it all to you, all the opinion and all the results. And we'll talk more and more about it. I appreciate everybody for tuning in tonight. We'll see you next week. I'll see you Friday morning. Right now, no interview guests Friday morning, so it'll be the 5-minute rant. So please, guys, bring that rant. And we're still working on some great guests, though. I'm talking with Artist Gilmore. I'm talking with Rick Berry. I'm talking with June Jones. I'm talking with a lot of guys. It's just a matter of getting them to commit to a date time. And we're still working to get you guys those great interviews. And we also have a Major League Baseball update for you. But, well, thank you, TGI Sports Talk, College Football Huddle. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.